Hello and welcome to my weekly video roundup. This week I'm coming to you from my office in Shettleston. Well, what a week it's been. I think it's only right for me to begin with a Brexit breakdown. On Monday, Prime Minister Theresa May flew to Strasbourg for last-minute negotiations with the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker. The talks went on into the night, which led to the Prime Minister's deputy, David Lidington, giving a late and patchy update to MPs. We were able to find out more about what was going on from journalists on Twitter than we were from the government itself.
The documents and the motion will be published, I hope and believe, later this evening. One thing I am not taking responsibility for. Many things in this government I take responsibility for, but Twitter accounts are not one of them.
I put on record my disgust at the total lack of respect shown to Scotland.
People flicking through the TV channels would be forgiven for thinking this is like Sky Sports transfer day deadline with the amount of late night horse trading that's going on. But on a serious point, can I ask the Minister, how many times today Downing Street or senior officials from the Prime Minister's office have spoken to Arlene Foster? And if this is United Kingdom of Equals, how many times has the government spoken to the First Ministers of Wales and Northern Ireland and Scotland?
In the end, Theresa May claimed victory by saying that she had secured legally binding changes to her Brexit deal.
MPs were clear that legal changes were needed to the backstop. Today we have secured legal changes.
So the Prime Minister seemed pretty confident that she'd secured the changes to her deal that her own backbenchers demanded. Was it enough? Unfortunately for Mrs May, everything unravelled pretty quickly. Senior EU figures were very quick to play down her claims.
We've insisted that the withdrawal agreement could not be rewritten and that the backstop arrangement, while intended to be temporary, must continue to apply unless and until it's replaced by future arrangements that can achieve the same objective.
It wasn't quite over for her yet though, and the Prime Minister seemed fairly confident that she would at least have the backing of her Attorney General.
Has a single word of the withdrawal agreement changed as a result of your meeting tonight? And has the Attorney General told you that he will therefore change his legal advice?
The Attorney General, as you know, is independent. He will come to his decision. He will publish his legal opinion for Parliament so that Parliament has that before it comes to vote tomorrow.
Unfortunately for her, she was completely wrong once again, and the Attorney General shattered her last remaining hope of securing support for her deal in the House of Commons.
But it is absolutely true, as she rightly says, that the risk of remaining in the backstop, absent any fundamental change of circumstance, if no bad faith or if no want of best endeavours is present, remains the same.
Last time the Prime Minister brought her bad deal to the House of Commons, she invited an historic defeat, the largest of any government in parliamentary history. Despite being only 2 weeks away from leaving the EU, this week she brought back essentially the same deal again. It was enough to win over some of her backbenchers who I suspect are worried about having to face a general election. In the end though, the second meaningful vote on Tuesday was another humiliating defeat for the Prime Minister, this time the third largest in history.
The ayes to the right, 242. The noes to the left, 391.
So what next for the PM? Well, she decided to hold a vote the following day on ruling out a no-deal Brexit and promised that her members of her own party would be free to vote however they wanted on this. The next day, an amendment to her motion narrowly passed by 4 votes, which strengthened the original wording to make it clear that the House of Commons objected to leaving the EU without a deal at any time. The Prime Minister panicked and went back on her earlier promise to give MPs a free vote, leading to an even bigger defeat as huge swathes of her MPs protested by either voting for the motion or abstaining. The PM handled the defeat with her now customary lack of humility.
The ayes to the right, 321. The noes to the left, 278.
Point of order, the Prime Minister.
On point of order, Mr. Speaker, the House has today provided a clear majority against leaving without a deal. However, I will repeat what I have said before.
Parliament has now expressed a totally clear and unmistakable view that the UK cannot crash out of the EU without a deal. Put simply, there is no appetite for a no-deal Brexit. So, what next now? Well, it's becoming increasingly clear that in order to break the impasse at Westminster, the option should go back to the people in a second referendum now that more is understood about what leaving the EU actually entails. Fortunately, an amendment was selected the following day which aimed to secure exactly that. Now, if you've been watching the proceedings live, you'll have noticed something strange while the vote was taking place. Despite the Labour Party making a lot of noise recently about supporting a people's vote, they sat on their hands and abstained rather than supporting one, ensuring that the amendment had no chance of passing. SNP Westminster leader Ian Blackford got a rapturous reception from the London audience in Question Time last night when he called Labour out.
I was absolutely gobsmacked today that there was an amendment that was brought forward that would allow us to have a people's vote. And we need leadership from the Labour front bench. And I was just absolutely appalled when Labour said, now is not the time. Well, goodness gracious, 2 weeks away from the intended leaving date. I used the expression in Parliament that a shiver ran along the Labour front bench and couldn't find a spine to climb up. Because, you know, that's the reality.
All of the other amendments to the motion were defeated last night, and in the end the government's motion passed to allow for a short extension to Article 50, but on the conditions that the EU agrees that the House of Commons can agree a deal by the 20th of March, something that looks incredibly unlikely. The government has indicated that it intends to bring back the Prime Minister's deal for a third attempt next week, but they still can't tell us when.
Given that we have seen lots of briefings that Meaningful Vote 3 will take place at some point next week, and given that the pound appears to be going tonto just about every day, can the Prime Minister tell us when Meaningful Vote 3 will be so that the markets can prepare for that nonsense next week again?
This is an altogether shameful state of affairs. With a fortnight to go, we are still locked in the midst of shambolic Brexit chaos with no clear path in sight. Make no mistake, this is entirely of the Prime Minister's own making. This impasse and lack of cross-party working is purely down to Theresa May, who continued to ignore offers of support after she lost her majority at the 2017 general election and instead gave the DUP £1 billion to prop her up. In short, the Prime Minister should have brought people together to find consensus. What we are seeing now is her chickens going home to roost. With Brexit consuming all of Parliament's time, the Prime Minister has completely given up on the day job. Knife crime is soaring in England and Wales due to police staff shortages there. NHS England is in the grip of a privatisation crisis, and our own DWP staff are taking strike action because she's failed to ensure that her flagship benefit reform, Universal Credit, has been adequately resourced. One striker described the service as being at crisis point and spoke of how they and their colleagues are at their wits' end with stress over how the controversial reform has been rolled out. This week, the Chancellor also gave his spring statement, shamefully refusing to inject the £26 billion he is sitting on into our public services, again because of the mess created by Brexit. He's also shamefully introduced the Prime Minister's Brexit Bribe Fund, £1.6 billion to specific areas to try and shore up support for our bad Brexit deal. This fund will be delivered directly by the UK Government rather than a portion being passed to the Scottish Government through Barnett Consequentials. Although it may have been flown under the radar of much of the media because of all the Brexit carry-on this week, this is a hugely significant step which rolls back on decades of devolution. The infamous vow, which was seen by many as being the desperate attempt to get people to vote no in the Scottish independence referendum, clearly promised that the Barnett formula would be protected and was endorsed by the Tories, Labour and the Lib Dems. The Chancellor's actions effectively ripped that up. Not only is Brexit bringing the UK to the brink of a constitutional crisis, but it's also a major threat to our security, something I raised at Justice Questions during the week.
Last week I met with the area commander in Glasgow East, and it's quite clear that the police are having to focus on Brexit preparations, and that's not what people in my constituency actually want them to be focusing on. They want them to be focusing on catching crime in the street. But doesn't he agree that it doesn't matter about all these contingency plans are put in place? If you don't have access to the European arrest warrant, then the only people that are going to benefit from that are those that seek to evade justice.
Now, as you've seen, it's been a heated week in the House of Commons, so I was very pleased to be able to bring about a moment of consensus on Thursday in recognition of the incredible work of 5th Clyde Broomhouse Scouts and other local scouting groups.
Well, the honourable gentleman is an authentic representative of the Scottish Scouting movement, I believe. Mr. David Linden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On Friday night I visited 5th Clyde Broomhouse Scouts group in my constituency, and they gave me very kindly this necktie. But can we have a statement from the government encouraging people to join the local scout group? And when the Minister comes to the dispatch box, will she give a very firm thank you to the volunteers who go out on a Friday night to invest in these young lives?
Well, I think the honourable gentleman looks very fetching in his scout tie. That's fantastic to see. And I absolutely join with him in congratulating all those who volunteer their time to take part in scouting groups, which do so much for young people in our United Kingdom. I would encourage him to perhaps seek an adjournment debate or a Westminster Hall debate so that all honourable members can pay tribute to their own local scouting groups.
And whilst it's been a busy week down the road, I've also managed to cram in some time back up here in the East End, including a very busy surgery this morning in Easterhouse and a meeting with Clyde Gateway and the Showman's Guild. So that's all from me this week. As ever, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me if you need my assistance. As ever, thanks for watching. Have a good weekend.